Well, hi everyone. Welcome to the 2012 Acting and Modeling Success Summit question and answer bonus session. This is for all of you that have purchased the recordings of the Success Summit. You might have more questions for Aaron Marcus, our host this evening. And we've had a few questions that have been written in ahead of time. And if you've got questions in real time tonight is the time for you to ask those questions to Aaron and get them answered. But before we get into that, I would like to welcome our host, Aaron Marcus, to tonight's call. Hi, Aaron.
Hey, it's great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about your day. I know you've been traveling, you've been doing your acting and modeling gig, and tell us a little about where you just came from and what you're actually doing today.
You know, it's really funny how this business can work. You know, you can drive and travel and take trains and buses and go to millions and millions of auditions and nothing pans out. And all of a sudden, I get a phone call from an agent about 5.5 hours away from me who said, "Hey, I've got a booking for you. I've got a TV commercial." And I said, "No audition?" And she said, No, you didn't have to audition for it. They loved your headshot. They saw my reel. And so that kind of helps make up for all the trips that I've had in the past couple of weeks. And it was such an incredible experience. Actually, I'm planning on blogging about it very, very soon. I remember, and I do want to get started with the Q&As really very, very shortly, but I was thinking about this as I was driving, and it's about 6 hours each way, so that's why I drove part of the way yesterday and just spent the night at a hotel and drove to the job and then drove about halfway back, and then I'm going to continue driving tonight. But I remember very early on in my career, I had a job in Washington, D.C., and I was an extra in a modeling job. And I remember there was a model who came in from Delaware, and I was thinking, this is incredible. This guy had a chance to travel, I guess it was about, 2.5 hours to a job, and I just thought, that is so neat. You get a chance to travel with this stuff too. And as I was making this the trip this morning, I was just kind of reflecting a little bit and just thinking about, this is really, it's just so amazing. Just getting an opportunity to see different places, even when I'm driving, just different kinds of neighborhoods and seeing mountains. This was in northwest Pennsylvania, fairly close to the Ohio border, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful day. And so, so I did a TV commercial for it's a telephone, internet, and I'm trying to think what else they do. It's telephone, internet, and TV company. And so, so I did the TV spot, and they're also doing some print ads with it as well. So if you happen to live anywhere in the northwest Pennsylvania area, you'll get a chance to see me probably the first week of April. So I just wanted to share a little bit of my day with you, and at the very end, I'll wind things up and tell you about some things that are coming up. But as Joel mentioned, this is a special bonus that is being offered exclusively for people who purchased a recording of the summit. And I thought this would be just a wonderful opportunity for a lot of us to hang out, ask questions. Also, don't forget, if you do have questions and you're not able to get them to me this evening, or maybe some new questions pop up, please go to my Facebook page. It's facebook.com/howtomodel, and that's HOWTOMODEL. And please post information there as well, so that way we can continue to build this really wonderful community of people who are helping each other. So if you have questions, maybe Joel can just kind of go over some of the specifics again of how you can ask the questions. I think there are a couple of different ways, and then we'll officially get going.
Yeah. So just for a little bit of housekeeping, if you have a question for us, if you're joining us live right now, there's a little question box to your bottom left on your screen where you're watching the slide presentation. Now, there's no actual slides tonight. We just have one slide up, but that area there is where you can ask a question. The other thing you can do is go to our chat room And you can also see other people typing their questions in as well if you decide to join us on the chat room tonight. Aaron, I want to start it off with a question from Isabella. She really would like some more information about getting started as a young actress when you're not living in a major market. She actually lives in the state of West Virginia, so I don't think there's any major markets in West Virginia at all. What does she do? What's Isabella to do when she's in that small market?
Well, you've got a couple of choices. One is if you would like to stay in the area and stay in your small market, which many people do. And let me just kind of go on a sidetrack here for just a second. I know that people, some agents, some casting directors, some managers will tell you if you're not living in New York, LA, Chicago, Miami, if you're not living in one of the major markets, you're not really going to work as an actor. You're not going to really get modeling work. And let me just tell you, that's just not true. Look, if you want to work on a television show, then absolutely. Living in New York and LA, those are the two cities you want to be in. If you want to work in films, and I'm not talking about just doing extra work, but I'm talking about either, day player, featured, starring roles, then certainly, New York, LA, those are the areas that you will need to be in. But most of the people that I know work as actors and models on a part-time basis. And if that's something that interests you, which, in a lot of ways, when you can have money coming in from other sources where you don't have to depend on booking a job in order to pay your rent or, pay for food, that could be a really nice way to approach the acting and modeling industry, and it takes a lot of pressure off of you. And the other myth that people seem to have is that, well, if you don't live in those major markets, there's nothing going on. And that also is simply not true. I spent the first 4 years of my acting and modeling career working in very small markets. I started off only working in the Baltimore, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia market. And there are some great jobs. I've booked national television commercials. I've had small parts in big projects that have come to town. There are many things that you can get involved with, even if you are living in a very small market. So here are some of the steps you're going to want to take. One of the ways that you can get work certainly is getting an agent. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this later in the session, but on April 21st, and I haven't announced this yet, and I'll be sending out information to you probably in about another week or so, but I'm going to have a 90-minute session that's going to be so unique. I've never heard of this happening before, where basically I'm going to walk people through a process of teaching you how to find local agents, and if you already have a local agent, how to find an agent in a distant market. But I'll tell you more about that pretty soon. But what you want to do, even if you're living in a secondary market, is number one, try to find an agent. That is going to be the best thing for you because the agents typically will know about most of the jobs that are coming through the area. Now, if you are in an area that doesn't have agencies, here are some other things that you can do. You can actually market yourself and get work on your own. And even if it's a small market, I would be really surprised if you didn't have any advertising agencies, if you didn't have any photographers in the area, if you didn't have any stores, even if they're just local stores, where they want to hire models. And so when you are trying to market yourself, and by the way, even if you have an agent, you still want to market yourself. I work with over 100 agents in many different markets, and still I market myself. I like to be aggressive. I don't like to just sit and wait for agents to call me. And I want to make this clear. I'm not trying to take away any work from agents. I will still send it through an agent, even if I book a job on my own. And there are a lot of reasons for doing that. And once again, I'll save that whole explanation for another time. But when you are marketing yourself, you want to go to advertising agencies. The people at the advertising agencies that you want to go to are either the art director, and or the creative director. Those are the two people who sometimes hire the actors for the TV commercials and hire the models for the modeling jobs, and they also will hire the radio, possibly announcers or the actors who are doing the radio spots. And so there are many, many different ways of finding advertising agencies in your area. One quick way, you can just, one, you can try Googling it, but also you can go to AAAA.org. It's 4 A's. And by the way, for those of you who have not gotten my book, How to Become a Successful Commercial Model, I've got a whole chapter just on this information. But, try to find some advertising agencies who are part of this association in your area. You might have them, you might not. But once you find the advertising agencies, you're going to send a very short letter. And if you have a professional headshot and or a composite sheet, and that's basically the business card for models, you're going to send them to the art director and the creative director. So even if you're living in a small market, don't give up. Don't think that you don't have anything going on for you. You might be surprised how much work is really available. Here's the crazy thing, and once again, I'm more familiar with the East Coast of the United States, but there's an agency that I've been working with for a long time. They are based in a very, very small town called Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which really is known for its pretzels. That's primarily what they're known for. They, I think, produce more pretzels than any other city in the United States. But they also have a really good agency there. And I've gotten some wonderful jobs through this agency at some really good advertising agencies. And, these are people who've chosen not to live in New York, even though they're fairly close to New York, but that's just not where they want to live and work. So just because you live in a small area doesn't mean that there aren't great things for you, but you've got to do some research and check some things out on your own. But that's what I would do. And if you're not ready to pick up and move, stay local and try to get as much work on a local level.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. Ty has a question. The question is, and this is, I guess, is a kind of a tough question to answer in some ways. How do I pursue modeling or acting when I have a full-time job, Monday through Friday, and I'm only off on the weekends? Is that possible?
Well, it will create some issues for you and any agent that you want to work with. Most of the jobs, especially in the commercial world, will happen Monday through Friday. That's just the reality. Now, having said that, if you are really interested in acting and modeling, there are some other avenues that you can pursue. One of them are student films. And student films typically will be shot on weekends. And I've done a couple of student films. They were great experiences. Look, if you're trying to make a lot of money by entering the acting world, that's not a way that you're going to be able to do it. And if that's your only reason for entering the industry, so you can, make enough money to, buy an island in the Pacific Ocean, then I would highly recommend that you choose another profession, because there are a lot of other ways that are much easier to make money. But if your passion is acting and or modeling, then without a doubt you can be doing theater, because most theater is going to be happening on weekends. Like I mentioned, student films. You can also, and I want to preface this by saying, and having a disclaimer, you've got to be very, very, very careful. But I've known some people who've had some real success going to Craigslist and finding some photographers. And these were paid jobs. I even know some people that have gotten some paid acting jobs as well. But you might be able to find somebody who is willing to work on your schedule. But, the reality is, and I just want to be very straight with you, most of the acting and modeling jobs that do occur are going to take place during the week.
Okay. What about, and a kind of a follow-up question from Ty is, can I get agencies to represent me if I don't have a flexible schedule? Like, what do I do if I don't have a flexible schedule? I've got some kind of commitments during the week.
Well, if you're going to tell an agent that you are never going to be available from 9 to 5 during the week, I think, And I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but I think it's going to be really difficult only because agents are in business to make money. And the way that they make money is they take a percentage of any booking that you get. And I can just tell you, typically in the modeling world, typically an agent will take a 20% commission. And in the acting world, if you are not a member of a union, SAG or AFTRA, then typically they're going to take a 20% commission. And if you are a member of SAG or AFTRA, as of today, they will take a 10% commission. So that's where they make their money. So if you're telling an agent, I'm never going to be able to do a booking with you because my schedule won't allow it, it's going to be really tough for the agent. Now, I do know some people who have full-time jobs that do allow them to periodically take time off. Maybe they can take an hour off during the day and attend a go-see, which is the audition for models. Maybe they can take a half hour, an hour, and go to an audition. Maybe they have enough, sick days built into their work schedule so that if once a month or maybe once every 3 or 4 months they can take a day off and actually do a job. Well, that could be a possibility. But, that's something that you would have to sit down and talk with an agent about. And look, they might say to you, no, I'm really sorry that I just can't do it. Or, they might say, well, look, I'm not going to put you at the top of my list, but, I understand your situation. If something comes up and if, maybe 2, 3, 4 times a year you can take a day off and do a job for me, then I'll consider it. And I can tell you, in today's time period, that actually might be a little bit easier, only because so many agents are working off of websites today. I mean, most agents have websites. And so if you have a headshot or a couple of your photos sitting on an agent's website, and they're not really out there marketing you all that much, and you will get a phone call about a possible job if a photographer, producer, art or creative director sees your photo on a website, then maybe the reality is maybe you would only need to have to take, 3, 4, 5, 6 days off a year and do the job. So, it's a possibility. It is complicated. You might get turned down depending on the agent, or they might say, well, look, we'll take a chance. If you do say no too many times to us, then we're going to have to, release you. But hey, look, you've got nothing to lose by, sitting down and talking with the agent. But the last thing I just want to say about this is please be honest with the agent. Don't try to pretend that you can do things that you can't deliver. A perfect example is there's a television show that I auditioned for yesterday. And one of the requirements is, because of this character, he has to look very similar to another character on the show. And because basically somebody says something to him, the star of the show thinks that he's somebody else, and he turns around and she realizes it's the wrong person. So the casting director really liked my look, and the question that I got from the agent today is, how tall are you? And I knew that the actor was 5'10". So, there was like these little flashes going on in my head saying, well, maybe I could just crouch down because I am 6 feet tall. Maybe I'll just bend my knees a little bit and I'll say I'm 5'10". But no, I said, look, I'm 6 feet tall without shoes on. And I have a feeling that would have been enough for me not to get the booking, which is a shame. But, this is a business. And, everybody runs their business in a different way, and I like to be very honest in my business. And yes, sometimes I will lose jobs because of that, and I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but that's just how my brain works. Just like if an agent asks, hey, can you do a Liverpool dialect? Can you sound like you're from Scotland? Well, I can't. And I did have to turn down a job for that, once again, for a television show. And the thing is, I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to embarrass the agent that submitted me for the job. So, yeah, I might lose some of these things. but I also know that agents can trust me and they can count on me because my word means everything to me. So if you are going to sit down with the agent, make sure you let the agent know what your schedule is like.
Thanks, Aaron. Just a reminder, if you've got a question where people are just now joining us, feel free to type the questions into your question box there. You can also join us in the chat. There's a link up on the top left of your webinar control panel page, or your webinar page up to the left there. If you'd like to ask a question live on the air, I can unmute you and you can ask it verbally. If you have a question and you're listening on the phone, you can only do this if you're on the phone called in. Feel free to press *2. It will raise your hand, and I'll know you want to ask a question, and I can unmute you, and Aaron can talk to you right on the air live. So feel free to press *2 if you've got a question there. More questions, Aaron? You ready for this?
Absolutely.
So Nikki has 2 questions. The first kind of goes along with what you were just talking about agents. She says, any idea how to determine if your agent is giving you the honest rate for a booking? She says, I've had suspicions and I don't know if I've been taken.
Wow, that is a complicated question. So if I'm understanding it correctly, you have some questions about whether the agent is actually getting a higher fee from whoever is paying her for the job, and the agent is telling you it's a lower fee. Now, I'm not really sure why you would be thinking that. I'm not saying it's not true. I mean, it could be true. You know what? That's going to be a tough one. There's really no way of really knowing unless, and I'm not recommending you do this, but the only way for you to know for sure is one of 2 things. If there was another, and I don't know if this is a modeling job or an acting job, but if there was another talent on the set, and perhaps they were from another agency, if they were getting a different fee, a higher fee than you, well, then that might be the case, although sometimes agents will kind of battle each other and undercut each other, and so maybe that's not a definite. The other thing is, you could always ask the client, hey, by the way, I can't remember, how much am I getting for this particular job? Now, I wouldn't recommend doing that because that might come back to the agent, and my guess would be that that agent will never work with you again. So, what it feels like to me is that you have questions in general about your agent. And that's a tough way to go with a representative, because if you think that your agent is dishonest and not being upfront with you and they're deceiving you, and well, I don't know if there are other agents in the area that you think are more trustworthy that you would like to try to work with. That might be an option. And I know this is a little bit of a different scenario, but it's the same concept. Typically for commercial modeling jobs, we have to wait 90 days before we get paid. And I've known a couple people that have experienced this, where after the 90 days, they spoke to the client. They might have had another job with that photographer, and they asked the photographer, hey, by the way, do you know when I should be getting paid from that last job? And the photographer told this particular model, I paid you 4 weeks ago. I sent it into the agency. Meanwhile, the agency had been telling the model they haven't gotten paid yet. So it was very clear to that model that the agent was lying to them. And I'm hoping that that's a rare instance, that really doesn't happen very much. But if that does happen, then maybe it is time to search for another agent, because once again, just like agents have to be able to trust the models and the actors, and the reverse is true as well. And if you are having some real concerns about that, maybe it's time to search for somebody new. You said there was a second part?
Yeah, a little bit related. Nikki asks, what is business casual for a female? When they say that, she says that's often proposed dress for auditions. What do they mean by that?
Ooh, well, I'll tell you, fashion and clothing is probably not my area of expertise. I mean, I've got a whole closet filled with suits, all kinds of props. Typically, I'm wearing jeans and t-shirts and sweatshirts most of the time. But here's my guess. Well, actually, you know what? Instead of just guessing, here are two ideas that I have. Number one, and because this has happened to me quite a few times, where they might say business casual to go to an audition or even a possible job. What I do is I will very specifically ask the agent, what exactly do you mean? Is that a sports coat and no tie? Are those khaki pants and a polo shirt? I want the agent to tell me, because hopefully the agent has the breakdown and will know very specifically what that means. I don't like to guess, and I like to walk into that audition and that go-see looking the part. So the first thing I would do is I would ask the agent, and I know that sometimes we're kind of hesitant about doing that because we look dumb, or we think we look dumb, or we seem like we just don't get it. Well, the fact of the matter is we're being very smart by asking. But be prepared, because sometimes you might get an agent that is kind of short with you and snappy with you and say, well, it's business casual. What do you think it is? Well, you know what? Then I would say, well, you know what? I'm really not sure. That's why I'm asking. But if I was going to guess, and I'm just purely guessing, at least for a guy, business casual, it could be, khakis, penny loafers, could be a nice shirt. Maybe it's a polo shirt. Maybe it's a sports coat and no tie. It's very hard to know. So if you have to make a blind guess, that's what I would be thinking. But the best bet is always ask your agent to clarify it.
What about, Aaron, this is actually my question, taking extra outfits with you to just so, onto a job so you've got that as a backup? Okay, well that's a good point. Now there are two different scenarios. One is if we're talking about a job and it's an acting or modeling job and you were asked to bring business casual. Well, that's a whole different scenario because, well, number one, I would still ask, but I would bring a ton of things. And sometimes, and I've seen other models kind of laugh at me, because sometimes I will walk into a shoot for a modeling job with a huge garment bag filled with clothes. And sometimes other models will walk in with, one shirt, one extra suit, and things like that. And what I do is, my frame of mind is this. I always want to put myself in the shoes of the photographer and or the art and creative director. And if I were them and a model showed up with a very small amount of choices, I would be upset because, we don't know what the background is. We don't know what the other models might be wearing. We don't know what kind of color schemes they're going with. So you want to give these people lots of choices. It makes their life easier. It makes the session better. Because when you do walk in with, crumpled up clothing and things that just aren't usable, it leaves a really bad impression with people. And essentially, we are salespeople, except we're selling ourselves. And so the better product that you can sell somebody, the greater the chances are they're going to want to buy again. Now, if it is for a go-see or an audition, still, it might not be a bad idea to wear what you think is appropriate, but then maybe just bring one extra garment. And you can even leave it in the car, and that way if you walk in there and it's very clear that you are dressed really wrong for this thing, then, you always have a backup. I can tell you for me, I think I've only done that once in my life. I pretty much would never do that because I'm normally pretty sure of what I need to look like. But that is a good idea, Joel, to maybe have one extra thing. Okay. Switching gears a little bit, Jason. Oh, by the way, if you have a question, feel free to type into the question area. This is the time for those of you that have questions for Aaron to answer, feel free to type those in, get those answered tonight. There's a little question box there for you to type your name and question in, and I can read those live to Aaron on the air tonight. Jason has a question. Are there any benefits to joining SAG or AFTRA while in a non-major market? My ultimate plan is to move to Los Angeles or New York one day, and I'm almost union eligible. I live here in Virginia.
Well, that's another complicated question. Especially what's complicating it even more is, let me give you the short version right now so everybody knows. I'm unfortunately, I don't have the time to go into all the details about the unions, but essentially the Screen Actors Guild, that is SAG, and they cover basic contracts for all feature films that you see, for some television shows. It used to be almost all, but now that's changed. Training films, industrial films, educational films, they will fall under the SAG contract. AFTRA covers radio people, musicians, disc jockeys. All the soap operas fall under AFTRA. There are other, especially in today's time period, there are lots of new television shows that are falling under AFTRA. One of the things that's complicating your question is that it looks like both of those unions are going to merge. We voted it down, and I'm a member of both of those unions. We voted it down every year that it's come up, but it looks like this year they're going to merge. And it will be less expensive, I think, and actually this is something you can check out. I believe it will be less expensive for you to join now as opposed to waiting until the merger takes place. We're voting on it actually as we speak. I've already mailed in my vote. If you are living in an area where there really isn't much union work, now, I'm not sure if you're in Northern Virginia or in Southern Virginia. In Northern Virginia, there is union work. In Southern Virginia, there's not nearly as much. But if you're living in an area that doesn't have much union work, I wouldn't jump into joining so quickly. Once again, unless it might be a financial thing and it might be more economical to do it now. The number one rule with being a union member is once you become a union member, you are only allowed to do union acting jobs. Now, they don't care about modeling, and just to complicate things a little bit more, there are a few exceptions to the rule in certain markets, and I don't even want to get into all the specific details about them, but without a doubt, if you are planning to move to LA or move to New York, it will make life easier for you as far as getting representation is if you are already a union member. And as of now, I mean, it sounds like you're almost eligible to be a union member. So if you're thinking that it's going to be a fairly close time period for you to make that move, maybe it would be helpful. But just keep in mind, if you don't believe that you've had the experience that you would like to have with acting jobs, that you feel like you want to take on, more auditions and have more experience on sets and things like that, then, and I know as a union member I shouldn't be saying this, and this is being recorded, but I still stand on this thought that I wouldn't join the union yet. Only because you want to have as much experience as you possibly can. The unions, without a doubt, you will earn more money when you become a union member. Now, unfortunately for me as a union member, there are many markets where there's a tremendous amount of non-union work. But you don't have the earning power, and you also don't have the backing of a union in case you run into a problem. And just as a little thing, and I don't want to get too specific about the unions, but even like for television commercials, when you do a union television commercial, you get a session fee, and then depending on where the commercial is running, the larger the market, the more money you get. and it can run for 13 weeks, and then every 13 weeks, as long as that commercial is running, you will get a residual check, and that will include your session fee plus, they're called units, and every city has a certain amount of unit, and you get paid a certain amount of money per unit. And you can make a tremendous amount of money doing TV commercials that are union. When you do a non-union television commercial, you get a fee to do the commercial, and that's it. It can run for another 10,000 years, and you will not get another penny. So, and the other thing too is, let's say you're working on a set, and all of a sudden, you're working for 10 hours, you haven't been fed, or there's no working bathroom in the area, or it's freezing outside, and the producers or the director aren't giving you the proper breaks. Well, if you're not in the union, you really have nobody to go to get some help with that. When you are in the union, you have tremendous backing, and they will be extremely helpful to you. So, the final answer here is, if you're thinking about heading to a larger market, absolutely, I think it will be very helpful to you. Just make sure that you are ready and that you've gotten the experience that you want.
Very good, thanks. If you got a question, don't forget, type it in the question box. Dammy has a question. What should I expect on my first photo shoot?
Okay, now I wish that she would be able to do a follow-up so that I would know, are you meaning what to expect if you're doing your first headshot session? What should you expect if you're doing some commercial photos for your portfolio? Or are you talking about an actual job as your first photo session? Because each one will have different meanings to it, and you can expect different kinds of things. I guess, ultimately, for all three of those kinds of scenarios, as far as your expectations go, I hope you love it. Don't be surprised if you are scared to death if it's your first session. To me, that's pretty normal. And I can tell you, even though, after today, I've done 1,182 acting and modeling jobs, and I can tell you, when I do a headshot session, they scare me to death. I feel so much pressure. I don't like doing headshots, and I know during the summit, when I was interviewing Joe Henson, he certainly can verify it. And I told him, I'm anxious about it. Everything turned out great. I love my headshot. Actually, that's what you're seeing on the PowerPoint. But expect it, and it's okay, to feel that way. It means you're a human. Certainly, like with anything else, the more you do it, the easier it's going to be. And I'm not trying to compare it to surgery, but I'm assuming that the first time a medical student, has to take a cadaver and, slice somebody's body open, well, I'm sure they're a little anxious and nervous about it and things like that. But, you work with enough patience and things start calming down for you. So, I would expect, to have butterflies, and just like, the same thing would happen for any kind of job as well.
Okay, thank you. Todd has a question. Is transitioning between crew and on-camera positions detrimental to my career? I have interests and have been working on both sides, but I'm afraid this could have a confusing or negative effect on my resume.
Well, I guess it depends on what your main interest is. Are you interested in primarily working on crew, or are you more interested in doing, acting? It's funny you happen to mention that. There is an actor, his name is Clark Johnson. The name might not mean anything to you, but besides being an unbelievably nice guy, he's also an incredibly talented actor, and his first major break in the acting world came many years ago. There was a show on NBC called Homicide: Life on the Street, and he was one of the principal actors. Prior to being on this television show, he was working crew up in Canada. He was from the Philadelphia area. His family moved to the Toronto area, and he was crew for a long time. And he liked it, but he also really loved acting. And so he did transition from crew to acting, and now he's directing. And he's directed a lot of television shows, he's directed a lot of movies. I know he acted in The Wire as well in the last season, and he also directed some of the episodes. So, I think that having as many experiences in the industry can be very helpful to you. I mean, as far as a resume goes, you're not going to put anything about crew work on your acting resume, because that's not telling the casting director anything about your acting skills. Now, maybe in the special skills part of the resume, maybe that would be a place where you could list a couple of things. Whether you're camera operator or professional lighting person or whatever you were doing, because I have no idea. But I don't think there's any problem with that. It might be hard to flip-flop back and forth a lot, but without a doubt, you just never know in this industry where things are going to take you.
Okay. If you've got a question you'd like to ask live on the air, please feel free to press *2 if you're in on your phone, if you're listening on your phone. If you're on the web, there's a little box there to type your questions in. Feel free to type that in. We only have a few more minutes left. We wanted to get to people's questions and answer those. Tammy has a question. She says, I noticed that many fashion models have agents all over the country. Is it possible to have representation in New York if you live in Chicago as a commercial model or actor?
Well, the agent that I work with in Chicago, it's called Stewart Talent. It's a great agency. They're based in Chicago. They also have an office in New York. They also have an office in Atlanta. Now, they do work separately. They're 3 separate agencies. But if you do have an agent in Chicago, maybe they do have an office, in another city, and you could just simply ask the agent, your local agent, would you be able to, have them put you in touch with the other agent in the other markets? If they don't, certainly, you can look into agents in other areas. As a matter of fact, that is part of what this April 21st, finding an agent 90-minute online workshop is going to be all about. But the short version is this. I have over 100 agents in many different markets. Now, having said that, I probably work with maybe 12, 15 agents on a regular basis. Some of these agents that I'm listed with, I haven't booked anything with in years and years and years and years. Some of them I've never booked anything with, but I still stay in touch with them just in case something does pop up for me. But here's the main thing to keep in mind. If you want to multi-list and you want to work in another market, number one, if you have an exclusive contract with your local agent, you have to understand what that contract says. Is it exclusive only for your particular region and you are allowed to work with agents in other markets without any problem? Or does the contract read you can only work with that agent any place in the world? So assuming that legally you can work with other agents in other markets, the key thing to keep in mind is you have to make yourself available so that you can be there. I'm not saying it can't happen. Of course, it does happen. But the chances of you living in Chicago and an agent booking you for a job in New York, it's going to be difficult without, attending a go-see, unless you have an incredible portfolio, you have tremendous experience, you are on the New York agent's website, so the clients are seeing you, but you might be considered a local hire, which means you might have to pay for transportation to get to New York. You might have to, pay for your own hotel because you'll probably come in the day before. So absolutely, you can work in different markets. I do all the time. But you've got to make sure that you are available and that you can be there whenever they call you.
Okay. Tammy's also got a second question. I'd like to know the opportunities for plus-size models in modeling and acting.
Yeah, well, that's an area that many, many more agencies have gotten involved with. There are specialty agencies and also just regular commercial modeling agencies that have a plus-size division. What I would do is, and there are a number of websites that you can go to. One I'm just thinking off the top of my head. It's called plusmodels.com. And, I would, first just Google plus-size modeling agents and, see what comes up for you. And then I would also just check out plusmodels.com, see what they have to say. Sometimes it's kind of shocking what is considered plus-size models. I mean, some of the women that I've seen in some of the catalogs, I'm not really sure why they're considered plus-size, but they are. And you also have to understand that the plus-size models, I mean, they're beautiful, they're toned, they're larger than petite models and other commercial models. But what you need to do is find out from the agent in your area or the agents in your area, do they have a plus-size division, and what are their specific requirements. But absolutely, if that's something of interest to you, you definitely want to pursue it.
Okay. And then the final question that's come through so far for tonight. I attended AMTC's Winter Shine convention. Would photos taken during the different showcases, cold read, scene read, etc., be good for building a portfolio to try to get commercial print work, or should they be photos from modeling sessions?
Well, typically, and this holds true for all conventions, it's not uncommon for photos that are needed for the convention will have a different kind of look for photos that you're going to use in a portfolio to try to get work with. And now sometimes they can be the same, but typically for a convention, all you really need are really good, sharp, clear images of yourself. And I know there's some really good photographers that do that for people going to conventions. And the reason for that is because sometimes people can look very different in person than in photographs. I mean, I've seen some people in person who were just drop-dead gorgeous, and then you put them in front of a camera and take some pictures, and they look like a deer caught in the headlights. And there are other people that I've seen in person, and I think, well, they look fine, they look nice, and you put them in front of a camera, and they just explode and jump off the page, and the camera just loves them. So for conventions, that is really all that you need. You need nice, sharp, clear images so agents, casting directors, managers, producers, so they can see what you look like photographed. So if that is what you have, then yeah, I would put together some different shots for your portfolio and for your next composite sheet. Now, it's possible that maybe you do have more intricate kinds of photos that were taken for the convention. But, once again, I spent 26 pages of my book just talking about how to put together great shots, but the very, very, very short version is, for your portfolio, the best kinds of shots to have are photos that show a variety of expressions and emotions. Not just the same kind of smiling shot over and over and over again with different wardrobe and a different background. And if you can, try to set up the shot so it looks like an ad. Now, you don't want to use logos or brand names, but you do want to use props in the shot, because that way the agents, the photographers, the art and creative directors can really get a much better sense of what you're capable of doing. And I'm sure there'll be another session that we have where I will spend 90 minutes just talking about that. So, depending on the shots that you have, that's what will determine whether you can use them or if you should be putting together some new photos.
Fantastic. Another question just came in from Virginia. Where is the best place to locate auditions? Once you find an audition, is there any preliminary work, such as making a telephone call or letting the person holding the audition know that you'll be present if you don't have an agent yet? Or do you simply just show up at the audition? Like, in other words, after you book it, do you need to do any kind of follow-up between the time you book it and the time you show up?
Let me make sure I'm understanding this. So you find out about an audition on your own, and so the question is whether you should let the company, producer, director, casting director know that you're going to be showing up. I would tend to think that for any kind of audition that you find out about, there should be some kind of contact information. I would hope maybe there's a website that will have some kind of details, unless the people are thinking, you know what, this is going to be a mob scene. We're going to have 100 people show up. I don't want to get 100 phone calls from people. If that's the case, and it would be nice if somebody would have some way of getting in touch. But if not, then I guess if they don't have any kind of contact information, I guess there really wouldn't be a way for you to let them know that you are showing up. But I would certainly hope that that's not the case. And by the way, if you are ever, and this holds true for for men and women, but if you're going to an audition that you found completely on your own, there's no contact information, you really know nothing about these people. And I'm not trying to scare anybody, but look, you got to be really careful in today's time period. Bring somebody with you, preferably somebody really big. Let people know where you are. Have your phone with you. Tell people what time you should be out of there. You just have to be very careful, especially once again if this is something being set up on your own, and you have really no way of verifying whether these people are legitimate or not.
Okay. Nikki has another question she just wrote in. After reading your book, I have brainstormed different lookable or bookable roles for me, and I'm in the process of creating those with a photographer. I know these quote-unquote ad-looking shots go in the portfolio, as you were discussing now, but are these shots also good to use on a comp card? So you might want to tell us what a comp card is.
Okay, yeah. Now, a comp card, that is the business card for models. And comp cards have a few different names. Sometimes they're called composite sheets, comp cards, and on the West Coast they call them Z cards. And unlike a headshot, which is always going to be 8x10, and you'll have a resume on the back, a comp card or composite sheet, they come in a variety of sizes. They can be 5x7, they can be 6x8, they can be a little bigger, a little smaller. Sometimes people will have one photo on the front and then maybe 3 or 4 shots on the back. The typical kind of comp card will have a headshot on the front and then 3 or 4 shots on the back. Some people have a bunch, maybe 3 or 4 photos just on the front, nothing on the back. But yes, to answer your question, you want to take these shots that actually look like ads, that show a variety of expressions and emotions, and that is what you're going to use on your composite sheet. And the way that I got started was I did some test shots. And so a test shot essentially means that they're not actual ads, but I'm creating photos to place on my composite sheet and in my portfolio. And my first composite sheet consisted of 4 test shots, and that was it. So absolutely, those are the kinds of photos you want on your composite sheet. And then as you start getting some work, you'll find, is the tear sheet, and that's the copy of the ad that you did, is that better than what you currently have? And if so, then maybe once you get 2 new actual ads, 2 actual tear sheets, then you'll start creating a new composite sheet, and you'll start deleting some of the test shots and put the better shots on there. But absolutely, yeah, you want to put those on your composite sheet.
Fantastic. So last question. Getting work in the UK, getting auditions in the UK. Do you have any ideas on, let's see, who asked this question here. I want to make sure I've got the right person's name. Dammy asked again. So he's interested, or she is interested in finding out, she's in the Hatfield, UK area. What about getting shots overseas, other countries? The same process as the United States, same thing you've been talking about here. Can you give us some background on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about the commercial modeling world, as well as the acting world too. I mean, the process is the same. In the UK, you have agents. In the UK, you've got advertising agencies. You have photographers. Now, some of the specifics are going to be a little bit different. You know, you're not going to have the American Association of Advertising Agencies, you know, in the UK, but you're going to follow the exact same process of, you know, hopefully finding representation with an agent, but also marketing yourself as well. And that's what you want to do.
Very good. Well, thank you, Aaron, for all the questions being answered tonight. I know that, you know, you and I have talked, and I've heard you say things so many times about getting an agent is really one of the most critical things you can do when you're starting out or really wanting to ramp up your career in maybe another market. Let's say you're already doing acting and modeling in one market, you want to move to another market, so you have to find an agent to do that, or you're just getting started and you've done maybe some things on your own, or you're just wanting to get an agent to get yourself started. 21st of April, we've got a great workshop coming up specifically dealing with getting an agent, whether you're starting out or moving to a different market. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're actually going to cover during that session, and we're going to get some more details about this, but give us kind of an overview of that.
One of the things that's going to be so exciting about this event, about finding an agent, is that we're going to be able to actually visit websites of agents, and basically it's the process that I just used because I wanted to have an agent in the Miami area. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to visit all this stuff online. You're going to be able to see different agents' websites, and then I'm going to break them down for people. And I'm going to explain, these are some of the things you want to be looking for. These are some of the things you want to stay away from. These are the kinds of agents that really aren't going to be very helpful to you. That's just the beginning part. Then, once you start finding the agents, then we're going to start seeing, well, how do you submit yourself? What do they want? How do you go about doing all this? Then, once we go through that process, then how to prepare in case they would like to sit down and actually talk with you. And we're going to talk about the questions you're going to ask, the kinds of answers you should be getting. And the coolest part about this entire event is 2 weeks after that, we are going to have a follow-up checkup so that for everybody who attends this 90-minute workshop, you're going to be able to come back just like in this kind of situation. You can tell us what things worked for you. Did you run into some stumbling blocks? Did you actually find an agent? And we can talk about it and discuss it and share these ideas. And so this is going to be just incredibly helpful for anybody who either is looking for a local agent or, like you had mentioned before, somebody who has an agent but you want to start expanding into other markets.
Absolutely.
And this way it's going to be a real step-by-step cookbook, just teaching you very, very specifically how to go about doing this.
Yeah, I really like the style that you and I have talked about, where we're going to walk people through, literally live on the screen, step by step, how you just recently got an agent in the Miami area. And you'll show them the process you go through, and they can literally follow along in whatever market they're in and do the same things that you're going to be showing us how to do. And then also that follow-up, because every market's different, every person's different. I mean, it's impossible to do a one-size-fits-all, so the follow-up's really important. After they spend the time with you one-on-one or on the call, seeing step by step, then they can come back and ask the questions in a group setting and kind of get more information about that. And I know that we haven't really announced how it's going to work out yet or all that, but this is going to be very accessible for people also. We're going to make this an accessible price point, a way people can join us and be a part of this, because I know your heart is really to see people getting started in the industry. So I appreciate that.
The video should be up probably by the end of next week, I would think.
Fantastic. So let's just give some other touch points here. If you've got more questions you'd like to ask, more discussions, we have a Facebook page, or facebook.com/how-to-model, facebook.com/how-to-model, and there has been a lot of activity on there. Make sure you like the page. Aaron makes regular updates there, and if you ask questions, it's a community forum where not only Aaron can answer your questions, but there's other people in the industry that can have input. Discussion can happen there. You can upload photos, get comments on different headshots and photos you're doing for your career. It's a great resource for you to use. And then also Aaron's website, howtomodel.com, is a great place to go for all the resources you need as an actor or model. He's continually posting information there, videos, audio. There's different coming events posted there. We also have, there's his book, if you've not gotten a copy of that, which everyone here should have a copy of that, because you're all purchasers of the Success Summit recordings, and you got a book from that. But also there's coming workshops there and other things. If you'd like a private one-on-one coaching setup with Aaron, he does private one-on-one coaching. Please email him. His email address is aaron@howtomodel.com, aaron@howtomodel.com, and two A's, AARON @howtomodel.com. That's how you spell that. Just put in the subject line one-on-one coaching. And Aaron has in fact, he's just been doing some this week with people where you literally go on Skype or over the phone, and he walks you through the process of you specifically in your specific market, your specific body type, your specific look. He walks you through what to do on a one-on-one scenario. And feel free to send him an email asking about that. Thanks, everybody, for being on the call tonight. Aaron, any parting words, last things you want to say before we head off?
No, but it was a fun night, and looking forward to talking with everybody soon.
Okay, well, I'll see you very soon. Thanks so much, everybody.